Yo, what's up? It's Jimmy on from Glitchy Thumbs. We're making characters, we're making games the glitchy way. In today's episode, we're using character 3.2. I forgot his nickname already. I think it was Mousehead. We're using Mousehead in Buildbox. We're going to build a mechanic with it. This time it isn't going to be from scratch. So that way we have an idea of how else we can build games inside of Buildbox. If you haven't already, check out the Blender portion, how I created this 3D model. It's a pretty lengthy process. I tried my best to thoroughly explain that. We did some new things. Check out those videos and whatever characters I worked on before. They're all super informative. It'll help you learn to create your own characters. Let's get to the video. I open up Buildbox, click 3D game, drop in our FBX for character 3.2, Mousehead, lower the cube. That way we can see the character. This looks pretty awesome already. I really like how this character came out. It looks pretty dead on my sketch that I did. I should have the Procreate video on how I came up with the sketch for this character. Definitely check that out as well. In the scene, I click edit. Scroll down, change it from white to black. Now we have our outline that we made in Blender. If you need to know how to do that, definitely check out the Blender video. I checked two-sided to see what it does. It just shows the outline in all black, and then I just unchecked it. I still have to look at what two-sided does. I occasionally just press some buttons and see what it does. That's how I learn things anyway. I learn being hands-on and just doing a bunch of random things, clicking buttons, randomly placing things in the game engine, seeing what it does, A/B testing across multiple nodes to see what it does to my characters. That's pretty much how I learn. If I want a more in-depth explanation, then I'll go to Google and search it up. Or I'll go on YouTube to see if someone else has figured it out. Or I go on the forum because there's a lot of people who's figured out some cool stuff with Buildbox. There's also a Discord for Buildbox as well. You can also search for things if it comes to mind. I click play because I want to see the character. Remember, we hit that cube under the grass. When the scene starts, the cube actually rises above the ground. So this looks like a animation that's happening, but it's not. The cube is just dynamic and it's just trying to find a way to sit on top of the ground. Normally you can just select the ground and change the ground type to something else like no ground. That way you can have the cube as a platform. You just need to change the physics from dynamic to kinematic so it keeps it in place, but it's still able to interact with character 3.2 Mousehead. I click play again and this is what our character looks like. We're going to need the view to be a little bit lowered so that we can actually have a view right in front of character 3.2. I zoom in. That's a little bit too close, but we get a pretty cool close-up of character 3.2. He looks like a pretty cool mouse character. That's a pretty good idle animation that I created in Blender. Super simple. The keyframe animations actually worked out much better than I expected. It definitely matches the mouse character. It looks like he's just chilling in place, waiting for some sort of enemy or sniffing out some cheese. Those are some ideas that I think of when I look at this character. So that's actually some pretty good ideas. Sniffing for cheese. I could have some sort of cheese game where we have to go through obstacles or enemies in order to reach the cheese. Or we could have some puzzle mechanic where you have to figure things out. And then you have to get to the cheese, which is locked behind some cage. The enemy can actually be some cat that you avoid, maybe like a big cat paw, and it's just going like this. The hand goes up. That's when you pass through. Hand goes down. That's one enemy character. The other ones can be like a mouse trap. If you land into it, it will just smack you and kill you, of course. That's all I can think of at the moment. This could take place in some kitchen, living room, or in a house. That would be a second game idea if I were to expand upon this idea. The one that we're going to be going through is the first game idea that I actually came up with for this character, just based on whatever game mechanics I was thinking of at the time. Quite possibly, you might see me build the second game mechanic at some point. That way we have two different game mechanics to actually compare to and see which one I like the most. It's like how I like doing things. I like to have two different ideas side by side and then play with both. Whether or not I like them is based on how they play, on the mechanic itself. If I find one that's way funner than the other, then most likely that one's going to be exciting for other people to play. If I'm excited and I'm willing to actually build out the game mechanic, then it's actually worth creating. That's the fun part, because I'll have a lot of motivation to build it. Every character and every game has that motivation. As you're working through the game idea, that motivation starts to dwindle down. You have to find your own discipline on finishing that game, because it might take longer than you expected. You're going to add a bunch of different things within the game. That's normally what happens with a lot of game mechanics. They never get finished because either you're adding way too much things or it wasn't fun to begin with. So you started with a project that was doomed to fail anyways. You weren't ever going to get to the final result. That's where my thought process is. That's why I like building simple, short games. I know I could finish it, but also you need that momentum to kind of compound and then build a lot of motivation for you, a lot of energy. Every project just becomes fun to build because you spent so much time learning all the tools on how to build your game. You spend a lot of time building this character, and now you have to develop the character story, and then you have to story tell at the same time. Those are a lot of things that people dismiss. Those are a lot of things that I think about. I just think if you're not having fun with your game idea or your characters and trying to visualize something that's different than what other people have visualized, then it's just going to be like everything else and not as fun. I try to make it unique as possible. Of course, there's a bunch of game mechanics out there. Of course, there's going to be some overlapping ideas, but this is your game. This is your character. This is your idea. It's one of a kind. There's really no replication other than the ones that are after your idea. People are going to see your game idea and they're going to get inspired. They're going to want to make their own characters. That's how the cycle works. Anyways, a lot of the ideas I have aren't obviously going to be the first game idea that's out there. Of course, there's going to be a bunch of ideas that I've seen, that I've played before, but all of that's merging into one idea that I have specifically for this character. Of course, I can always have multiple game mechanics per character. The moral of the story is I just need to see the game idea visually and also be hands-on with it to actually see if I'll build it out as a final full game, which is what the goal is supposed to be for this entire journey. But also everything is documented, it's recorded, and you get to see how I came up with that full game. We're still trying to figure it out. Let's get back to the video. Since we know what the character looks like, the outline is working correctly for character 3.2 mouse head. I click File, back to New, and there's a bunch of free templates in Buildbox that you can use for your game mechanics and your game ideas. These are all just some basic ones that you can use to understand what Buildbox is all about. They're all fairly very different from each other, so you can practice using some of these templates to understand how the node system works, how different mechanics are formed together. That's how I practiced in the beginning. I played a lot with these templates to understand what each does. I haven't built a game with any of them yet. That's why I decided to possibly use one for character 3.2 because it would match this character. I just looked at one of the templates that I liked that I think can really work for this character. The one I decided to choose was Jump Tower. You play as this ball. It goes left and right, and when it hits the wall, the direction reverses. You're pretty much trying to get to the top of the tower or the top of the level, however you want to visualize it. You pretty much have to avoid any spikes or obstacles in your way. These cool spikes spawn every time you pass a portion in the level. I thought that was going to be the best template for character 3.2. I think it will work best. It's pretty simple and straightforward. I click play. This is Jump Tower. There's a play button in the middle. When you click it, you start off with this blue ball, and it's moving to the right, and you tap to jump. When you reach the right wall, the blue ball actually reverses the movement. So now you're going left into the left wall, and then it reverses the movement again. Your goal is to tap to jump to get above the next platform. You collect coins, and you can't go backwards because you have these spikes that spawn. That's a way to prevent the player from going back in the game. That's a explanation of this template, and at the time I thought this worked super well for character 3.2 mouse head. You can visualize how it works for this character. I dropped in the FBX, click import, click character 3.2. I copy the keyframe animation and the subscene. I click into the blue ball and I paste the keyframe animation and the subscene that we copied from character 3.2. From here, I connected the start to enabled for the subscene, also the start to play on the keyframe animation. For the keyframe animation, you need to connect this purple endpoint into the animation of the subscene. That's how you connect your keyframe animations to your subscenes. But if you have multiple ones, that's the process on how you would do that. Like I said, I usually do things in the most simplest way so that I understand it first. And then when you get to the more complex stuff, like having multiple keyframe animations, you'll actually understand how to connect everything for each of your characters. That's why it's easy to start with animation, which is our idle animation for character 3.2. That makes it easier for you to understand, but also is easier to explain. It's very straightforward. Also, that's as simple as it gets. Since we have the character now within the nodes, we don't need the 3D model, which is the blue ball. So I delete that. That's how you will replace the blue ball with your own character. You can organize this however you want. Back to the 3D game world. Now you can see character 3.2. He's very tiny because the scale is actually about 0.49. So we need to actually scale this back up to the original size. I put 1 in the X, Y, and Z axis. Back into the subscene, I need to change the outline from white to black. Uncheck receive shadow. You can keep it on if you want to, but usually I uncheck it. For my characters, I click play, click the play button. Character 3.2 moves to the right side, bounces off the wall, and then moves to the left side. When you tap, the mouse jumps. The problem with this is our character isn't reversing the direction, so it's not facing the opposite direction. When it hits the right wall, it should actually now face from right to left, so it makes sense that you're going left now. We need to implement that at some point in the mechanic. I don't know if I do it right now, but I know I do it at some point in the video. Right now, I'm actually just scaling the character to be a little bit bigger. The character was probably a little bit too small for me. I changed the scale to 3 in the X, Y, and Z axis. This makes character 3.2 bigger, of course. This is way too big at this point. I don't know why he gets stuck. I go into debug mode to see why. It looks like our collision shape is super huge, so it doesn't actually fit in this area, I guess. It fit when it was super small. To fix this, you just edit your collision shape. You see the sphere is definitely too big. There's a lot of collision shapes actually for this character. We have to make sure to adjust the correct one. We can actually just click through each of the collision shapes and they'll highlight on the right side. It might be this platform collision. I just decided to leave it as is and just scale the character down back to 1 and then check the collision shapes again just to see what happened when I scaled everything. You can see the collision shape is back to being small again. That's why our character was working with no issues. The collision shape is still a little bit too big in comparison to the character. By clicking to the character in the subscene, you can actually scale the character up. This will scale the character without scaling anything else like the collision shapes. This might actually work much better. Make sure to press enter after you've inputted your values, otherwise the values won't save. Most likely one of the values didn't save. That's why it looks a little smushed here. If I click the subscene again, yep, the scale in the X and Y didn't save when I put 3 earlier. Make sure to press enter on both X and Y. Now the character is back to a scale of 3. When you go to edit your collision shape, you can see our collision shapes wasn't affected when we scaled the character. That's how you would do it if you want to scale your character without ruining the current collision shape. When you do it in the subscene, it affects your character in all the scenes. That way you don't have to scale it individually per scene, like on level 1, level 2, level 3. You can just do it in the subscene and it will work across the entire game. I think this collision shape actually works much better with the character now being this large with a scale of 3. We can actually test this. He's actually still too big, I guess. Probably too high off the ground. That's why when we jumped, we're actually jumping through the platform because the collision shape isn't lined up with character 3.2, mouse head. We need to definitely fix that, but at least we know the character works and the size of it works. We just need to adjust this collision shape. So I align all the collision shapes actually, where the sphere is like directly in the middle, where the top and the bottom of the head is. Click play and see if this works much better. This looks pretty good for when it hits the left wall and the right wall. In the subscene, I decrease the scale to 2 now for X, Y, and Z axis. Double check the collision shape. I think this still works for our character. Click play again. As long as the character stays on top of the platform and it makes sense and we're able to jump through the different platforms to get as high as we can, then it should all be pretty good. Let's get out of debug mode since we don't need to see the collision shapes. We want to just focus on the character and the game mechanic. It looks pretty good. Character 3.2 is above the platform. It's hitting the right wall and the left wall as it should. Back into the character, we actually need to check loop to get the animation to loop. Don't forget to save. You don't want to lose your progress. We made pretty good progress so far with the character. In my characters 3 folder, I create a new folder, call it character 3.2. I click into the previous characters folder and just choose the same BB doc. That way I have the same naming convention across all my characters, and I just need to increment the value from 1 to 2. That's how I do it. And then I add another extension. If this is a specific game mechanic, then I would add the name so that way I know what game mechanic this is. If I ever need to reuse this as a template in the future, I'll know this is a jump tower template for character 3.2. That's going to be useful if I do reuse this mechanic in the future. Maybe I learned something in this game mechanic and I can apply it with other characters in the future. That's how I label things. It's easy to understand for me. And also now I have all these videos where I narrate and explain my workflow, so I can't really forget things that I did. Now I can just refer to these videos. Think of it as reference points for each of these characters. I can always refer to each and every one of them if I need to know what nodes did what, or what mechanic worked and what didn't, what new things I learned. It'll all be documented for me. Also, for people who are watching all of my content, you guys get to see what I do on a daily basis and also learn how you can actually create your own characters and your own game mechanics. It was all pretty educational, I guess. That's just how I think. Like, I wish someone posted their game dev journey documented from start to finish, literally every step that they did to get to their specific game in a way that is simple for me to understand, but also simple for me to recreate and build my own games. There's a lot of videos on YouTube and stuff, but they're super complex, super technical, and I understand a lot of those things. I understand the logic. I can actually do it, but in terms of timing, am I really going to spend years and years to learn, let's just say, a specific thing? Not really. I'd rather create things as quick as possible, get the excitement out, get my creative juices flowing, create and visualize as if things are already able to be created in a day. I want to create some complex things in the most simplest way. Now I'm at a point where I'm able to explain the things that I'm doing because I've learned a whole bunch of stuff. I've created a bunch of games. I've produced a lot of games, but I've done that with a bunch of designers and programmers on my team. Now I'm actually being the one-man show to see what can I create with all of this knowledge that I learned. That's why I'm documenting everything, so that way I remember as much as I can on my entire process. We'll get to see some cool things that I create. So that's gonna be super fun. So far I'm having super fun going through the entire process, seeing all my characters come to life. That's the entire fun part for me, seeing all the sketches that I came up with from my mind, bringing them out into this universe and seeing what games I create out of it. Hopefully we'll be able to get a whole bunch of players, play all my simple games, and we'll see where we go from there. Back in the 3D game world, we just checked the looped so that the animation actually plays. I didn't really notice that the animation wasn't playing. I click play. It seems to be working pretty well. There's multiple collision shapes. There's one for the left wall. There's one for the right wall. There's one for hitting the enemies. There's one for the left platform. And there's one for the right platform. So there's a bunch of if collides in this game mechanic. And then the mind map, we don't really need this main menu UI. It's in the way. It's like an extra step to get to the game mechanic. So I just connected the start to the 3D game world. That way we skip the main menu. When I go to project settings, change the bundle ID. You can also change the name on the device here if you want. You can remove the game icon if you want to, or you can leave it. I leave it here. I'm exporting to iOS. I guess I'm testing on the device first to see how this game mechanic will work out. It's just something to play with on my device. Click continue export. Normally it's okay when I click continue export, but this time it wasn't working. So I clicked back to claim ID. I was thinking maybe the ads were checked within Buildbox. That's why I couldn't export at some point. That's why I'm back in the mind map and I go to game UI to check to see if any banner ad or interstitial ad is checked. For the game UI, there isn't, but for game over, the banner ad is checked, so I unchecked that. Also, the banner ad and the interstitial ad is checked on the pause UI, and I unchecked those as well. Same for the main menu UI. Uncheck those two. Normally, that's the case on why I couldn't export. That's a little bit annoying to me, but that's okay. I usually know how to fix it. But I guess this didn't work either when I click continue export. So this was actually stopping my workflow process. I like to do it a very particular way. I go back to the mind map just to double check everything again. It should have worked in theory, having everything unchecked for the ads. Add a new UI, but then I click main menu UI again and notice the ad frequency for interstitial was 4, so I changed that to 1, making sure everything was set to 1 for any of the ad frequencies. In the pause UI, there was also a 4 here. Don't forget to press enter. That's always an issue for me. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. See, if you don't press enter, you always have to go back and double check. These are things that are normally hard to troubleshoot if you're looking for specific things in your game. I'm just double checking. Since I made all those changes, I go back to File, Export, iOS, Continue Export. This is an error to me, but I guess this is a way that Buildbox wanted us to do it. I decided to claim and export. So let's claim and export this bundle ID. In order to generate this iOS bundle ID, I need to check whether this game is being directed to children under age of 13. I checked that the game is not being directed at children under the age of 13 and also agreed to the terms and service. This is in accordance with the Children's Privacy Protection Act, COPA, and it requires all products that use AdBox to identify whether or not they are directed at children under age of 13 in the United States. And then click export. I guess since I claimed this bundle ID, I'm able to export now. Finally, we're making some progress in the workflow process. Like I said, I like things where it's seamless. And we've already exported a few characters with their mechanics and I've had no issues. This was the first time that I've actually had to export this way where I had to claim an ID. Maybe this was the first time I had to do it for that bundle ID in general. I normally just use the same bundle ID across all characters to test game mechanics. So we won't have to worry about this for any of the future characters unless we're submitting a game to the App Store. Then we'll need another bundle ID. If we're just testing, one bundle ID is usually how I do it. Now that we have our Xcode project, we can open it under signing and capabilities, add some sort of value to the bundle ID. I put 3.2. It separates each character with a new app. That way I can always go back to play with my game mechanics if I need to. Under info, bundle display name, change this to character 3.2. I could have did this in the project settings in Buildbox as well, but this is usually my normal workflow process. So that's why I always remember to do it in Xcode. To test this on the device, I just plug in my iPhone, wait for it to process the debug symbols for development, and then press play. Whenever it fails, and this will happen to you a lot, if there's certain errors, there's going to be a red stop error at the top, and you can normally click it to see what the error is. It will show on the left side, and it says building for iOS simulator, but linking in dylib built for iOS. So this build failed because we were trying to run it to the simulator instead of our device. It was still connected to the iPhone 14 Pro simulator when I was trying to run it, and we didn't switch to my device. So that's what you have to do. I haven't tested on the simulator for quite some time. I actually need to look at how to do that now. I normally just run it to my device and it works. So that's how I normally test my characters and my game mechanics anyways. I just do what works, and if it works, it works. When you run to the device, you get to play with your game mechanic. Let me pull up the screen recording that I did a screen recording of. I could have sworn I fixed the direction of the mouse first before I did the screen recording, but let's see. In the screen recording, that's actually fixed. Maybe it's in the video somewhere. Am I missing portion for this video? Let's see. Maybe I deleted. It looks like I'm missing a part to this video. Let's see. I think I am. All right. Some technical difficulties. I was missing some clips for things that I did. I was trying to make sure I didn't delete anything, so I had to go back to some old files. And I actually did fix the direction of character 3.2 mouse head. We'll actually see that in the video. In the game mechanic, that was something I mentioned earlier, where we need to fix where the direction of the mouse was going to face right to left when it bounces off the wall. We need to do that in Blender to change the character from facing left to right so that it faces right to left. We actually learned this in a previous character on how to do this the correct way. Otherwise, we'll have some shading issues and outline issues in Buildbox. The way that we're doing it is rotating it for this character. In Blender, make a duplicate of your separate objects for character 3.2 and rename this to rotated left. That way you know what this collection is. And I select the head and rotate it 180 degrees. You can type this in Blender. That will just snap into place, and then select the eyes. We don't really need to rotate this. We can just keep the eyes the way it is and just move it into place. Also, the nose, we need to shift over as well. That way it makes sense. We just need to align the eyes where it's facing correctly, similar to how it faced for the character facing left to right. Our textures are reversed for the head, and we need to fix that. Go to UV editing. We know we can move the UVs to the different locations in our texture so that it wraps nicely on our 3D mesh. That's what I did. Selected the top UV, which is now the front of the character, and moved it out of the way. Selected the bigger UV, scaled it down, and moved it up where the gray color is with no texture for the ears. For the bottom UV, scale this up so that it fits the new texture location. This one has the texture for the inner ears, whereas a darker charcoal color. That's pretty much how you fix your textures if you weren't familiar with this process. I've done it for character, I'm forgetting the character names now because there's so many of them. I've done it for the nose stash guy, which is character 1.4. I've also done it for character 2.2, which was Long Face Potamus. I think that was the character names. I know those are odd names. Those are names that I came up with, and that's what I remember. So that's what we're going with. If you need to refer to that process, you can check out those characters, character 1.4 or character 2.2, and also now character 3.2 for the rotation process in Blender for flipping your characters from left to right to left. They all have the similar process. If you want to see those videos, check it out. We also need to grab the rig for character 3.2. You can grab this from the original folder and just duplicate it and bring it over. I selected the meta rig and the rig and rotated it 180 degrees, moved it into place, making sure everything is aligned. Then I selected all the separate objects to join them because it's easier to parent the mesh and the rig together when everything is in one object. Select the head and shift select the rig. Press Ctrl P to parent with automatic weights. And that will parent your mesh and your rig together into one. You can just press play to see if the animation is working correctly. You don't need to redo your animation because it's reusing the animation that we already created. That's the usefulness of creating your own rigs and your own animations. You can always reuse it across characters that share this same rig. If I have another mouse character that has other parts to it, I can still use this rig and it will work perfectly fine for the idle animation. And since that works, now we need to create the outline, duplicate the head, rename it to head outline. In the vertex groups, add a group, rename it to outline, add the mask modifier, solidify modifier, check flip normals, check high quality normals, material index offset to 1, show vertex group to outline, in the mask vertex group to outline. Move the solidify modifier above the mask modifier, change the thickness to whatever you like, add the second material, which is the outline material, and now you can see the outline. Just make sure the thickness is set to the same value, similar to your character when it was facing left to right. I decreased the thickness from 0.02 to 0.01. Select the rig, press A to select all, so that way it selects the rig and also your mesh and also the outline of the mesh. Go to File, Export. Your settings are usually set to the same settings for your character if you've already exported it before. If you need to know the settings, refer to my previous videos. I've explained that multiple times. Normally it's just check selected objects, armature, mesh, Z forward, uncheck add leaf bones, uncheck NLA strips, uncheck all actions, and it will export that FBX with the action that you selected. Make sure to name this file correctly so you know. That's why I added rotated left for character 3_2. Click export. This is our FBX that we're going to be using in Buildbox so that we can reverse the direction of the character. Back into Buildbox, drop into FBX, make sure to check create new and click import. Click into the character. There's 2 keyframe animations in this, so I delete one of them. I copy the keyframe animation and the subscene into our character. How we connect this is there's a state machine that switches between right and left. What you can do is when it goes to the left state, connect it to play the keyframe animation for character 3.2 when it's rotated left, and connect this to enabled as well. Connect to stop on the first keyframe animation, so that way it stops that keyframe animation from playing. Also the same for the right state, connect to the stop for the rotated left, and click play to see if this works. I don't know if this works, but maybe it does. And it looks like it doesn't work this way. The character isn't reversing. In order to double check this, I actually connected the enabled for the rotated left subscene to the start, and connected the start to play for the rotated left, and disconnected the enabled on the first subscene, which is the one facing left to right. We need to make sure the FBX works with the new keyframe animation and the new subscene. This definitely works. You can see it's very tiny and it's facing right to left now. The keyframe animation and the subscene for the rotated left definitely works. The way we connected it earlier doesn't work with bouncing off the wall, so we need to figure that out. Let's fix character first. Uncheck receive shadow, changing the outline from white to black, changing the scale from 1 to 2 for X, Y, and Z axis. That way the sizing is correct for the character. This is correct from going right to left. We need to have it where the states switch. Reconnected everything back to the original settings. This time I connected on the state machine, on the right state. I connected to the enabled for the first subscene. I pressed play to see what happens. Character starts moving left to right, and when it hits the left wall, you can see the character disappeared, so it's in the left state now, but we don't have anything connected in the left state. So that's why you only see the trail, which is correct. And then when it hits the left wall, it switches back to the character facing left to right. So that definitely works. Now we just need to connect the second subscene to the left state. Click play. Character 3.2 moves left to right, hits the right wall, and the state changes. So now it's in the left state, and that reverses the direction. So now character 3.2 goes right to left, and that's correct. And when it hits the left wall, it reverts back to the right state. This is perfect. We've solved that problem. This looks pretty cool. Seeing character 3.2 mouse head in this mouse maze tower. Now we have a mechanic to play with this character, and it works perfectly. When I hit the spike, I didn't really die. There's also some blue debris, so we definitely need to fix that. Click the debris, which is the blue ball. Click the eyedropper tool, put it over the mouse to grab the gray color. Click into the character, under debris, explosion, minimum scale, I changed to 1. Maximum scale, I changed to 1. Total amounts, I changed to 40. Let's test this to see how that looks. We want to hit this spike. We explode into some huge spheres. The color isn't correct though. There's a lot of balls that are showing. I changed the minimum scale to 0.5. That was a little bit too big. Doesn't really make sense. Changed the maximum scale to 0.75. This is all trial and error. Just figuring out what debris and what the size you would like for your character. And then I add a signal invert, and I'm connecting the defeat into the signal invert. On the out endpoint, I connect it into the enabled for the subscene. This should actually invert the signal for the subscene to make the character disappear when the character is defeated. We only want to see the debris explosion and not the character. When I hit the spike, I explode into a bunch of spheres and we don't see the character. So that's correct. That's a way to disable your character when you die in your game when using FBXs. I changed the minimum scale, of the spheres, 2.25, and the maximum scale, 2.5. Felt like a little bit too big. I unchecked inherit color because it looked like the balls were white and not gray. It was inheriting the white color on our character. We actually have a texture on top of our 3D model. When you take off the texture, it's actually white on our 3D model. Press play. Hits the wall, we tap to jump, that's correct. These spikes come out, and then I can choose to see if all the changes we made are correct. And boom, that's pretty cool. The debris look like pretty good size for the death animation. That's actually super perfect for our character. I'm not sure what those two eyes were. They were probably behind the pink wall because we dragged in the FBX for our character earlier on, and we didn't delete that out of the scene. I'm adjusting some of these colors. Felt like the colors wasn't gonna work. The focus should actually be on the character. The color scheme, I usually gray everything out so that we don't focus too much on color palette at the moment, other than things we need to focus our eyes on. For the back wall, I chose the darker gray because then that gives us a contrast with our character. The character is a lighter gray and the background is a darker gray. The focus is now the character. I duplicate the debris and create a second one. This one is going to be a darker gray as well. And the character, I duplicate the debris explosion node, change the asset to the darker gray debris. That way when we die, two different debris are showing, a lighter color and a darker color. That makes sense for our character because that's what his color is. Now I add a third debris explosion. This one will be a black color, so we need a debris number 3. I'm just going with the flow with this, just trying to match the character because the outline is black, the main color is gray, the ears have a darker gray. When you die, you want to be able to see all those colors. At least it would make sense. At least that's what I was thinking at the time. You just have to adjust the total, minimum scale, and maximum scale to kind of have it make sense. You can choose however you want to do this. That's what I decided to choose. This works perfectly now. I was just experimenting with the different minimum scale and maximum scale so that it makes sense. This is what I decided for the death animation. Now that we're hitting some gray spikes, that doesn't make sense because our character is gray. So the color of the spike should actually be more alert. It should probably be like a red or pink color. The right wall and the left wall should actually be more of a neutral color because they don't actually kill us in the game. They shouldn't be like a red or a blue or a pink. I'm changing the right wall. I select the eyedropper tool and select this blue color that we already have on the bottom of our spikes. I do the same for the left wall, and this gives it more of a neutral color for our character. You see that really enhances the game. It makes sense because our eyes are looking for things to avoid. If it's red, we normally think, okay, we shouldn't touch that. We should save that color for something that's like an obstacle or an enemy. So that's why I chose the blue color. It's more neutral. It makes sense. We don't have to worry about the blue color, and the focus is on the character. Now we need to have some sort of color for all the bad things in the game, which is the spikes and the spinning spike balls. For the spike platforms, there's a bunch of 3D models that you can expand here. I'm just looking at how this asset was put together. Click into the spike platform. You can see there's a bunch of 3D models that are connected in this spike platform. This is how you can create different 3D models within Buildbox for your game. You can combine a bunch of shapes to create some sort of like platform or some sort of obstacle in your game. You can do a lot of various things. If you're not familiar with Blender and creating your own 3D models that way, you can actually do it in Buildbox this way using simple shapes. This is actually a way to combine things by just connecting the nodes. I've actually never done it this way, but maybe I'll do a video on that. I'd rather just create my 3D models in Blender and then bring them over. We'll see. Maybe in a future video, I'll have something where I do it this way. We need to change the spike color from gray to another color. So we can do so here. I'm changing it to some sort of pink because our walls are blue. So the contrast would be a pink. At least that's what makes sense to me. You can save the hex color code, which is this 6-digit value, and copy it, apply it to all the other 3D models in the hex color code. The reason I'm using the hex color code is because each model is in a different position, so I can't just delete that 3D model node and then duplicate another one. They're all in a different position, and the only way to actually change the color for all of them is to just paste in the new hex color code for each 3D model. That's the difference here. That's why I have to do it individually. This is pretty cool. The spike platforms is using a wake up node and then a scale animation. When the character actually reaches a certain height or a position in the game, the spike platforms will wake up and then scale. That's why when you look at it in the scene, everything looks a little bit squeezed together. There's actually scaling out when we actually reach a certain point. That's pretty cool. I can actually learn a lot from this, maybe use it for a different game mechanic for my characters. The spike platform actually creates a barrier for things you've already passed in your game. It makes you continue to move forward and not backwards. In any game mechanic, if I wanted to use this is a way to do it. Maybe we want our character to just keep jumping all the way up. That's how we have the character progress in the game. Maybe we can have some sort of chaser enemy that chases you. That's just another thing that makes the game a little bit more, I guess, exciting, but also more difficult. Now you have to watch for this other thing that's gonna kill you. But there's various things you can do, and I think the spike platforms might be useful for a different game mechanic. I'm just not sure where I would use it just yet. I haven't really used the wake up node just as much since I've seen it in this video and also in this game mechanic. Quite possibly it might be something that I might use. Start the game again, click play. Character 3.2 hits the right wall. We jump, we get to the next platform, collect some coins. When we get to the second platform, that's when the spike platforms scale out. You can see that happening with the 3D models, which is pretty cool. It's like an animation into the scene. Our spikes are pink now, so you know you can't touch them because it's a different color than any of the other colors in our game. All the other colors are somewhat neutral. We know the only color that's like a red or a pink in the game might be some sort of danger. Spikes is usually something we're not supposed to touch. We also have these spinning spikes, which is a blue color, and I didn't really notice that as much because of the color. It's blue, which means that it should be okay to touch, but it's not okay to touch, so we need to change the color of that as well. In the spike enemy, we can just click the color, paste in the hex code of the pink. That's kind of visible for the spike enemies, not really as much, but we can also just remove the texture on the spike enemy. It has a specific texture on it to create that sort of metallic look, I guess. It's wrapped on this 3D model. If we remove it, we might be able to see more of the pink color. I click into scene 2 where one of the spikes are, zoom in just so I can see how the spike will look like when I remove this texture. Now you can see our spike is entirely pink. That actually looks pretty good. We don't really need that sort of texture on top of the spike because we want to make sure that the player knows pink is something that you avoid. That's like the rules that we decided for this game. Blue is neutral, white is neutral, pink is something we avoid. We can visually see that within the game. Even if the player doesn't know, they'll know when they actually run into the pink colors. That's how we determine the rules for the game. Especially in a simple game like this, it should be easily understandable, easily digestible, straightforward, nothing confusing. That's pretty much the game mechanic for Character 3.2. Before I export this, so that I can test on my device and then grab a screen recording of the gameplay. Just double check all the UI screens, go to File, remove the game icon because I just like to keep everything plain. When you install on your device, it's usually like a gray, transparent color anyways. For the name on the device, it's no longer Jump Tower. That was just a template name. We can remove that in Buildbox. This is where you rename your game name, which appears under your icon, which is where I usually change the bundle display name in the info portion of Xcode. That's where you would change it if you want to do it in Buildbox instead of Xcode. It would be the same thing. Go to File, Export, iOS. If you've already exported an Xcode project, I would just delete it, move it to your trash. So that way you don't have older files that you're running and you think that's the correct game mechanic. I like to keep everything clean, organized, so that I know this is the correct Xcode project for running to my device. Same thing, signing in capabilities, increment the bundle ID 3.2, bundle display name, put character 3.2. Like I said, you can also put it in the Buildbox portion for name under icon or name on device, whatever it was called. Click play and run it to the device. I usually grab a screen recording of the gameplay. This is the potential game mechanic for character 3.2. Mouse head. The goal is to get to the top of the tower by jumping off the walls and collecting coins and making sure you avoid these pink spikes. You have to be very strategic in how you get to the top, because you can actually bump into the sides of the platforms and it will change your trajectory of the character. If you play too slowly, you might hit the walls and change your direction. You might actually hit one of the pink spikes. That's the game mechanic for character 3.2 mouse head. That concludes this video for character 3.2. I hope you learned how to use templates and Buildbox. This is how I decided to do it with character 3.2 mouse head. We used the jump tower template to create some sort of mouse maze tower where you have to get to the top, where the goal is to get to the top of the tower. That's mechanic number 1 and game idea number 1 that I thought of at the time. In the video, I actually thought of the character possibly being in a puzzle game, and the goal is actually to collect some sort of cheese. So you have to go through some sort of obstacles within the game, whether it's a cat moving the paw up and down. So it's like an avoiding game. So maybe the mechanic might be press and hold, or press to go, and then it stops in place and you have to press again. Or it can also be a joystick mechanic where you can actually move around as the mouse. But that might actually not work, can only be facing left and right. Maybe we'll be able to use this mechanic actually and create that sort of mechanic. Instead of actually climbing to the top of the tower, we can actually just go left and right, bounce back and forth through walls, but we can actually jump to different positions within the level to get to the cheese. There's a lot of things that I'm actually thinking of right now as we conclude this video. Let's see if I actually expand this game idea. I'm actually thinking of a lot of stuff right now, because the cheese can be in some sort of cage. So maybe you need to collect a bunch of keys first to unlock the cage. There might be 3 keys that you unlock. There's 3 keys placed throughout the level, and you're playing as the mouse, so you have to bounce left and right the entire time. You have to avoid a bunch of cats either chasing you or moving their paws down. I'm thinking of a big cat for some reason. That game idea possibly might work with this game mechanic. We'll see. I don't know why I had that idea towards the end of this video, but yeah, hopefully you learned about this entire process. What are some things I actually picked up from the Buildbox portion? Oh yeah, we used 2 FBX files, one to go to the right side and one to go on the left side. We did that in the save machine where we connected to enabled on the subscene for both of the FBXs. That allowed us to switch how the character looked like on the screen. Also the spike platforms. There was a wake up node with a scale node. I forget which node it is. Also, there was a bunch of 3D models that was being connected together to create this spike platform components. That's pretty much it. Anyways, this is a little bit different than I normally done it, but this is what I'm thinking about at the time. Hopefully you like this video. Please like and subscribe. It helps me, but also helps me continue to make more videos. We'll be able to push more videos out to more people if I keep getting the engagement. Let me know what you think of my process. Let me know if you're learning things. I'm definitely learning things about my own process, just reviewing my older videos so I can actually concentrate on what I'm doing. Check out my old videos. Let's get ready for character 3.3. I forget which character it is. I need to go look. Check out the next videos for character 3.3, the Blender and the Buildbox portion. We're always making characters and we're always making games the glitchy way. So I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.